prepare for takeoff.
Please welcome to the stage the president of Gbta, Denise Trousseau.
Look at everyone out there. Welcome back to Main Stage Gbta 2022. Have we not had a great start? What about giving a round of applause to all of the education sessions that went on this morning? All the volunteers that pulled it together, all the attendees that joined, thank you so much. Thank you to American Airlines for making possible the next insightful 90 minutes. Also, a friendly reminder, 2 hours left to cast your vote. Voting closes at 2 p.m. San Diego time. So great time to take out your phone, check your email, and cast your vote. In this session, we're going to talk about transformation. One of the areas of recent transformation at Gbta has been the relaunch of the Gbta Foundation. You may remember that the foundation was originally founded in 1989 as our charitable arm for education and research efforts. The foundation was put on hold in 2018. But this year, we brought it back with a new reimagined scope to specifically focus on a better future for our people and our planet. The new foundation focuses on Gbta's global sustainability initiatives, supporting those related to climate action as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other people-related topics via education, resource, and advocacy. Gbta's new sustainability program now falls underneath the foundation, as so do some of our other educational arms, including Win It by Gbta and Gbta Ladders. A new Gbta Foundation board was recently appointed by the board of directors. Paul Abbott, CEO of American Express Global Business Travel, serves as our chair. The foundation board will provide expert advisement on environmental and human sustainability opportunities that will help us evaluate the work of Gbta in our industry and beyond. As a first order of a board, they are prioritizing the foundation governance, guidance, and existing people and planet program efforts. They will also be determining our strategic plan for 2023 and what initiatives lie ahead. The relaunch of the foundation marks an important moment in the association's history as we renew our commitment to our people and the lasting positive impact. We are excited about the new Gbta Foundation and its board, and thank you to all those volunteers who stepped up to help serve on that. Now it's time to get down to some business, more specifically, the business of corporate travel. This afternoon, we're putting the focus on business transformation and the state of the industry. But before we do that, we need to get started to feel what you think about the industry recovery. So let's take out your mobile phones again, open up the Gbta Convention app, and we're going to cast a vote. I don't have my phone up here today because last night somebody was texting me why I was up here. So I will just talk through the questions. When you think about the travel recovery right now, how do you feel the state of the industry is? A, we are essentially in a position where I thought we would be. B, we're in a better position than I thought we would be. C, we're in a worse position than I thought we would be. Or D, It's complicated. I'm not exactly sure how I feel we are right now. The data, insights, and forecasts we'll hear today from the presenters will be key in continuing to understand, navigate, and adapt the path of the transformation and the state of the industry. So I think we maybe have some results now. Let's see what it looks like. So we look like we're pretty tied between we're in a better position or we're not quite sure. It's complicated. So thank you for that. I think depending on when we asked that question in the last year, it could have landed in many different ways. And that's essentially the story that we're going to tell here today. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the program.
Chapters help to bring our local business travel community together before we get together on the global scale. They actually were formed in many cases before GBTA was. Some chapters are as old as, well, 70 years, including my chapter, the New York City. For many of us coming out of the pandemic, the chapters were the first chance for us to really re-engage because we were with our local communities that were able to follow the guidelines that we had set. Chapter members are usually people who are coming from those local hotels. They're the local people at the agency. They're the ones who are really coming and doing stuff on the ground with the people that are local to them. So they know their buyers in their region. They may not know the buyers in California, but they know them in New York if they're in ours. The chapters also really help to bring the members together, so that way it's not just business that's happening, it's friendships that are forming.
Please welcome to the stage the CEO of GBTA, Suzanne Neufung.
Hi, everybody. Everybody have some food? All right. It was pretty noisy at the beginning of Denise's session. We give you food and everybody gets quiet. That's good. All right. So in my role as CEO of GBTA, I get asked the question all of the time, are we there yet? Last year, it was around the road to convention to Orlando. And this year, it is about getting back to 2019 levels of travel spend, which we know has been the benchmark for a long time. And as we debate about why and if that is the right benchmark for returning to 2019 levels, we know that we have to ask a lot of questions to come to an answer. So perhaps we should be looking forward to new ways to benchmark our industry, to redefine what that benchmark is, because we've just been through a pandemic which upended just about everything in our lives. And then, of course, there's the obvious follow-on question, which is, where do you think we'll be in a year from now? I thought that data was pretty interesting. There are about 18% of you that are really good predictors. I want to be on your stock choice list, so please add me. But a lot of us, it's been pretty uncertain, right? And we know that it's certainly been a journey for all of us. So at a minimum, the benchmark of getting back to 2019 levels gives us that spending level to aim for, which in 2019 was 1.4 trillion US dollars. It's a threshold for our industry to continue to strive to get back to, of course, because we lost so much in 2020 and 2021. And while it's only been about 9 months since our last convention, and the team here has never put on 2 conventions within 8.5 months, so I hope you're pretty happy with this one. It's pretty awesome. We also had the choice of whether we would put on another business travel index research survey. This survey is something that we've done for the last 14 years, and it is an exhaustive study of the business travel economics that we look at for spending trends, which cover 73 countries and 44 industries. So we pondered whether we should do another one of these because, you know, we were in November, things looked up, people were coming back to a big conference, and we didn't know if there would be enough material change during that period of time for us to actually impact the forecast that we gave you in November. My team and I are really glad that we decided to proceed because, boy, things weren't what we expected. In the last months, as we will show in this data, a lot has indeed changed. So today we'll see in the latest forecast that once again the road to recovery has not been straight nor has it been easily predicted. And I think what we saw in that data that you did on your own polling shows us that it's not very easily predicted. But first, let's take a look back at how we got here. The global business travel industry has faced significant challenges over the years, and we know from asking you last night, some of you have been in this industry for a long time, and you go all the way back to where this slide begins. This is actually one of my favorite Gbta slides. It was put together right at the point of the Great Recession, and it went back to 9/11. And what it does is it looks at how travel has been affected and then overlays the travel recovery trends on the side. And what we certainly see along here is that, if you could go a little faster, please, thank you. Since then, we know we've added to it. So we have gone through more crises since then. So we are an industry that certainly is resilient. We know that business travelers want to come back, and they get back on the road for sales, for projects, and for purpose. And so we continue to listen, to watch, and certainly to measure, and that's what we're doing here today. So as we move through the latest crisis, this COVID-19 pandemic, which we hopefully, as many said this morning in this morning's session, is in the rearview mirror, we continue to regularly poll you, and I know you got tired of all of those polls that we sent out. We have now made them every other month so that we ease up a little bit on it. But thanks to you, you are giving us that data over the last 2.5 years for us to be able to know where this industry is going. And because of your insights, we were able to analyze and publish that in-the-moment data that helped business travel professionals, our industry, media, and policymakers who were listening to us to better understand and navigate what was happening next and what was happening today in our business travel industry. So from our polls, like you see here, you can see the trajectory of the return of domestic business travel. It's pretty astounding how fast it stopped. I think that feels like a distant memory, but it's not that long ago. How fast it stopped, and then really how fast it steadily and purposefully started climbing again, really just a few months after the pandemic started. For many countries and regions in lockdown, domestic travel, as this chart shows, was really only the only travel that was allowed. And back then, most markets then in our sector's return was led by small and medium businesses. So if any of you are from small and medium businesses out there, we give you a big shout out because you helped lead us through this. And then you see international travel. Wow. So that was a very different story, of course. And it certainly lagged and took much longer. Some would say it is taking much longer because we're not back yet, much longer to return. We learned through all of this how government barriers to international travel could stop border crossings. Some of us were stopped. And also how public health responses that were not consistent, such as vaccine rollouts and digital passports, on the good side could get business-related cross-border traffic going again. And we know that that was a very important stage that we were in. But we as an industry also learned how confusing uncoordinated international response to the public health crisis could be for cross-border travelers and all of you who support them. And we learned how to prepare travelers for the possibility of getting stuck outside of one's home country if they tested positive for COVID while they were on a business trip. Anybody in the room, I know you got to put down your fork, but did anybody in the room have travelers stuck in a foreign country because they tested positive? All right, you guys have weathered this storm along with all of us. So certainly it's no wonder international business travel was suppressed until quite recently and is still really recovering. Now, from a supplier perspective, we've been asking that question about tracking your optimism. And I would say closer in, this was telling us how your business travel bookings were going in the next month. I think that's how our question was phrased. So more than any other question, this told us where travel was in the moment and in the short term where it was coming within that crisis that we were in. And before I unveil the most recent findings of this year's BTI, here is a recap of last November's to let you know when we are wrong, we admit we are wrong. So here, our November 2021 BTI forecast predicted a surge in business travel in 2022. Recovery was actually supposed to continue into 2023, pretty much at that pace. And by 2024, we were going to be at that 2019 level of 1.4 trillion. In fact, it was going to be 1.5 trillion, according to our predictions last November. Overall, of course, that 2021 BTI was very optimistic. It was a time, if you remember, where we were at. But it also came with some caveats, and these are some of the caveats that I talked about last November. A, the continuing successful global rollout of effective vaccines, along with a sharp decline in COVID cases. The willingness of business travelers to return to the road. The normalization of both national and corporate travel policies. The easing of strained supply chains and workforces. The combating of rising inflation. And the rate of recovery in Asia picking up again. So now we asked ourselves, are we there yet? Anybody know the answer to that question? Clearly not. Because shortly after our report came out, Omicron emerged and extended the pandemic. A war broke out in Eastern Europe that really threatened and caused energy markets to do crazy things. And rampant inflation has economists whispering that R word, recession, week after week after week as fears of economic recession come forward. So where do we think we'll be a year from now and even beyond? So in the BTI that we're releasing today, made possible by MasterCard. Thank you, MasterCard. Where's MasterCard? All right. Thank you, MasterCard. What we're releasing today really outlines the top-level outlook for global business travel for 2022 and 2026. And the bottom line, the good news is we have made progress, but we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to reach that full recovery if it's defined by 2019 numbers. So 2021, as you can see here, ended with a total spend with global travel ending at $697 billion, which is 5.5% above 2020 spend. And just pause for a minute. First quarter in 2020 was still booming. So really 2020 depression came from that stopping and then almost having to go from nowhere in 9 months, just getting to a level that was anything. And in fact, in 2021, the industry gained back roughly $36 billion of the $770 billion that we lost in business travel spend of that year in 2020. So those year-over-year gains might seem relatively modest, but we're certainly grateful for them, and they're important for the road to recovery. And it was really thanks to improvements in COVID recovery rates and conditions, mitigated risks, and the improvement of all of those barriers to international and in some cases domestic travel that we saw, whether we were traveling or we were supporting the people that were traveling on our programs. But what felt like a steady upward recovery was short-circuited, as we know, by the Omicron variant. Who knew that we'd have to know the entire Greek alphabet as part of this pandemic? I tell you. But as part of that, we saw a spike, which was really something that we didn't expect in late 2021 and the first half of 2022. So this year in 2022, global business travel is forecast to significantly outpace. Sounds like a familiar prediction, but we do see that it's already outpacing last year's pace of recovery, and that we expect a 34% increase this year in business travel spend, or getting us to $933 billion by the end of this year. That means that we will have gotten to about the 65% mark of pre-pandemic level spending, which was what we had in 2019. Now, we still have deteriorating economic conditions, and we have shifting trends that slow that global recovery that we were so optimistic about in 2021. And we are expecting to close now to get to pre-pandemic levels by close to the end of 2025. So we'll be almost at 1.4 trillion, we expect, in business travel by the end of 2025. But we won't really fully be able to claim victory and be back at those 2019 levels until about mid-2026. So then it's forecast to be about 1.47 trillion. And certainly we know that this adds another 18 months to that trajectory that we were talking about in November of 2021. So to understand more about those headwinds that have been pushing back the recovery of global business travel, all you have to do is look at the headlines. And they're similar to the caveats that we had last year. According to the Gbta, the biggest obstacles that stand between us and more accelerated growth for business travel are persistent inflation, high energy prices and shortages, severe supply chain and labor shortages, significant economic slowdown in China, and major regional impacts due to the war in Ukraine. Add to that market pressures for more sustainable business practices, which we're all thinking about, and we indeed have a lot of obstacles which have been proven challenging to our industry across the board for companies, for economies, and certainly for governments. So now another continuing thread in the recovery story is that regions themselves will not recover at the same pace. So in all, global business travel spending is expected to gain 33.8% this year, but as we'll see, this divergent recovery and differences in business travel spending is reflective across the world's top markets. The time and pacing is different depending on the region where you're from. So let's look at this. North America led the recovery in 2021 in numbers driven largely by rapidly returning domestic travel. I would say that was very much a United States instance, a little less in Canada. And Western Europe actually decreased year over year. It was the one region that decreased year over year in the COVID-19 pandemic of 2021. Because it was ravished even more by COVID, by travel policies and other things, and the more cautious approach domestically and regionally. Now that said, both of these regions are going to experience some of the sharpest recoveries that we see this year and next year, and they should have compound increases of 23.4% and 16.9% respectively by 2026. Asia-Pac helped lead the industry in terms of recovery in late 2020 into 2021, which you might be surprised about, but China was still traveling domestically. So if you think about what was happening in APAC, that was a really important moment for them. But that reversed in 2022 because of China's zero COVID lockdown policy, and it led to wide-scale lockdowns as well as other countries coming out of the pandemic in a slower than expected way. So we expect a modest increase of 16.5% in spending in APAC this year, which is really held back by China's 5.5% that we're expecting this year. But overall, they should get to about 66% of their pre-pandemic spend by the end of this year. Now in Latin America, we know that we have some, who's from Latin America in here? There you are, thank you, thank you. Where we expect Latin America this year is that we expect modest growth. We saw modest growth in 2021, certainly as the vaccination efforts got off to a slower start. And this year, there may be more challenges in the region, including flat demand from the US and from China, rising inflation, and slowing GDP growth. However, we still expect a pretty strong growth, 55% growth in spend in Latin America this year as business travel recovers to 83% of pre-pandemic levels. After convention, we'll publish the total report, which will give you country-by-country breakdowns, as well as all of those current trends and past trends, as well as our outlooks through 2026. So the dynamic nature and recovery, as well as current market conditions, are also evident of the just released 2023 Global Business Travel Pricing Forecast. And we know that session sold out this morning. So let's talk a little bit about what you might have missed. So for 8 years, CWT and Gbta have partnered on this analysis for pricing predictors and factors to help business travel managers plan their annual programs and policies. The latest report shows that the anticipated impacts to airfares, hotel rooms, and car rental prices are what you're all seeing on those schedules and pricing levels that you see. So let's look at what some of those are. We see that airfare prices are expected to experience a steep rise of 48.5%. I have to sort of pause while I read that number. We looked at that number and had to think, was that right? That's happening in 2022, but actually that's still below pre-pandemic levels, and that should stay the same until about 2023. Then prices are expected to rise another further 8.5% or so in 2023. Hotel prices, you've seen the rise there, are expected to rise 18.5% in 2022, followed by an 8.2% lift in 2023. What we know already, many of you, is that hotel prices have already eclipsed 2019 levels in some areas, and by 2023, they'll be above 2019 levels everywhere. Now, in the global car rental space, their prices are expected to increase 7.3% this year, hitting new all-time highs, and rise a further 6.8% in 2023. So to round out our economic outlook ahead, we also sought out, like we did in November, I think for the very first time, we sought out new opinions from other key stakeholders. Because economists think one thing, and we know when we ask you, budget owners, and your travelers, we get sometimes the different answer. So for a second year in a row, we surveyed business travelers, frequent business travelers, as well as finance leaders from 4 major regions: North America, South America, Asia Pacific, and Europe, and we asked them to give their unique on-the-ground perspectives. So we conducted this survey just last month. This is really recent data, and it represents certainly up-to-the-minute viewpoint of over 400 frequent business travelers, as well as about 48 or 50 budget owners at that corporate level. And what we can tell you, as you see here, 85% of business travelers surveyed said they definitely need travel to accomplish their goals. So you hear this from your travelers themselves, I'm sure. And over 3/4 said they expect to travel for work more this year than they did last year. Now, half of the finance executives said that their business spending has already returned to 2019 levels, or will by the end of this year. 84% of them voiced confidence that their travel spending would be somewhat to significantly increased in 2023 compared to 2022. So this is where you're putting your budgets together, right? And that their company needs to engage in business travel in order to accomplish their objectives. So that's really important. The business travelers and the budget managers see that business travel is important. Because for both of them, they said face-to-face meetings matter. 73% of business travelers and 84% of finance executives say in-person meetings are more effective than virtual meetings. And I think it took us a pandemic to realize that, but we are back face-to-face. Now that said, they both feel that there are still headwinds, and nearly 3/4 of business travelers and 2/3 of finance executives confirmed the sentiment that inflation and the threat of economic recession overshadow COVID concerns, because we gave them sort of 2 bad scenarios and they chose the one that they fear most. But that said, they're still concerned about COVID-19, and 68% of the travelers and 82% of those finance executives expect COVID infection rates and variants to still have some impact on their travel in the near future. In APAC, it was even more significant. What we saw there is that it was 13% higher for business travelers, or 77% have a concern about COVID in APAC. So if you support APAC programs, or if you're in APAC, you certainly understand that this is true at the moment. All right, so that's a lot of data analysis and forecasts to consider, and we certainly encourage you to take a look at both the forecasting report that we have with CWT and the Business Travel Index made possible by MasterCard. And also plan to attend, we have more sessions about the pricing forecast as well as the BTI all the way through Wednesday here at Convention to learn more. So even as we consider these new forecasts and factors, one thing remains clear. The global business travel industry continues to make progress and move forward. All right, so let's keep the conversation going. Now at this point, I'd like to welcome to the GBTA stage Robert Isom, CEO of American Airlines, for further discussion and to provide his insights on where he sees the global travel industry going in the near future? Robert? Love Robert.
Good to see you.
All right, have a seat. All right, we're going to let you have that one.
You're going to have me here.
Yeah,
Okay.
pull your seat
So I've got my team right here.
Oh, the
gotta be able
fan
to see 'em.
club. All right. All right, Robert, you are in a new job. Lots of people out there are in a new job. It's a little bit different in the seat you're in, whether it's an airline seat or your job seat. What's been the most surprising part of becoming CEO of American Airlines?
Oh, that's a good question. I never realized how hard Doug Parker had to work. He was my predecessor, okay? I'm just realizing now that there's so much going on in the business today in the world, so much you have to be prepared for. The CEO job, it's pretty time consuming, but you know what? A lot of fun, and we get to work with some great people.
We know your people.
Yeah.
We love your people, and we're so glad you're here today. I think that, I've bored people with all of this data, but we know that you look at data, too, on an intensely, both domestic and international way. Where do you see business travel coming back, or is it coming back, according to American Airlines data?
Well, Suzanne, we reported our second quarter earnings, a month or so ago. And you know what? I mean, we reported a profit. And then on top of that, for business travel in general, it's back. It's back in a different way. And so I know when we talk about business travel in general, you think of the big corporates. But for us, we've seen small and medium-sized businesses really lead the way. They're back well over 100%. And even though corporates are kind of in the 75% range, where small businesses are, corporates are going to follow. I can guarantee you that.
Do you see the same thing in international? Do you see international coming back at the same pace? Where is international today?
Well, international, especially Europe, I think would be a lot larger if we had the capacity to actually service the demand. But as we've all kind of grown back from COVID, things have been a little bit tougher in some parts of the world. So Europe, I do think, is on track. South America as well. And as you stated in your own data, I think Asia's a little bit behind. But that's where I see great news. So in the long run, we're already back in terms of domestic travel and small, medium-sized businesses. Corporates are going to come back and then add to that international travel as well. There's a lot of reason for optimism over the long run.
We're hearing about Heathrow. We know you fly into Heathrow.
Yeah.
As you think about customer experience and what the end-to-end journey, there's so much you have to handle in that run. How do you think about customer experience? How do you where do you personally get involved and support your team when it comes to customer experience?
Well, London Heathrow is incredibly important to American, and also, our partnerships. We have a joint business with Gbta and with Iberia, but it has been difficult. So we really had a jump start within the U.S. in terms of getting back and handling traffic. American, during the pandemic, handled 1 out of every 3 customers that traveled. So we felt pretty prepared, but as traffic really bounced back in Europe, especially London Heathrow, you found that there were a lot of things that weren't in the right position. So for American, what we've tried to do is to really make sure that our operation and BA's operation is linked up and as protected as possible. So recently, we isolated our operations to Terminal 3, and it's really worked out well. Now, as time progresses, I think that you're going to see everyone get back to where they can handle the traffic, and I look forward to really taking advantage of some of the work that we're doing in JFK with T8. Later on this year, you're going to see some really good things with new facilities and for the One World carriers all coming together under one roof.
Well, I live in New York City, and I've seen all that construction going on. And can we talk about another big airport in New York? Like, what's happened at LaGuardia?
Hey, has anybody traveled to LaGuardia recently? No, it's not the same place, and a tremendous amount of development is going on in New York, as well as throughout the country. But within New York, if you haven't been to LaGuardia, go see it. And if you really want to get a treat, take a look at our new Admiral's Club lounge there. It's fabulous, and it mirrors investment that we've made in other places. For those of you that want to go out to Reagan National in DC, the same thing. Later on this year, we're going to be opening up a new lounge. And we're really trying to make sure that we get ready for customers when they really are all back in full.
You talked earlier with me backstage about roots and what American chose to do a bit differently, which also affects customer experience. Right. So talk about where customer experience means having planes and flights where people need them. What has been your approach there?
Well, when business fell so quickly overall, both leisure and also business and corporate travel, we really had to make sure, okay, what is it that we want to be when we come out? And so we rationalized our fleet. You'll find American has the newest aircraft in the business. We took a look at the investments we were making in our airports as well. And then the one thing that we did is we made sure that that we could fly people to wherever they wanted to go. So throughout the pandemic and even today, we have more origins and destinations in our network than any other carrier, and it's serving us very well. People travel for all sorts of reasons. During the pandemic, I always told a story of calling up a customer that was flying a lot, and I was wondering why. And they told me that they were a bone marrow courier, and American was the only airline that could get them to where they needed to go. Wow. And so the same thing holds true as we come out of the pandemic. People want to go to a lot of different places, and it starts with network, and that's why at American Airlines, you're going to see us with the strongest network overall.
So I have to ask you this question. When you're a CEO flying on your airline, does it always leave on time?
Well, if you're flying, when I'm flying American, of course, It's leaving on time, right? No, you know what, Susanna, I'll have you know that I fly sometimes under the radar, and both in coach and also
like wearing a baseball cap
up in the front cabin, And I'll tell you what, anybody that wants to fly either with me or on your own, you're gonna do just fine.
So on a more serious note, everybody here is talking about sustainability.
Right.
What is American Airlines doing to think about the future and getting to net zero by 2050, or what are in your plans, and what are you doing in the short term?
We have the long-term goal of net zero by 2050, and also science-based targets, which we've signed up for, that require us to achieve certain thresholds by 2035. But the biggest thing we can all do is actually to fly new airplanes. And you know why? It's because every generation of aircraft and the engines that come on those aircraft, they burn less fuel. And so for us right now, I feel really pleased with what we've done throughout the pandemic. We've continued our investment and have $26 billion of new aircraft, the youngest fleet in the business. Fantastic. You do that first, and then you find out how to fly the most direct routings. That's going to be the biggest thing you can do. And then the other point that I'll make is that with sustainable aviation fuel, that's probably the only way in the short run that we can really hit the targets that we set in terms of carbon emissions reductions. And on that front, you're going to see American doing more than anyone else, including using sustainable aviation fuel right now, potentially blended into the fuel on some of your flights today.
I know we all want to know when we're flying in greener planes,
right.
So if there's a way for you to let us know as passengers, that would be an awesome thing to know with the flight attendant telling us what we're flying on, or the pilot at some point. That would be super cool. I think the challenges with sustainability as well is that we all are wanting to do the right thing for our planet as well as keep business going.
Right.
So we know that executives as well are making sure that their people are going in the right place. Do you see certain industries within the business travel space coming back first in the large space? Because we have a lot of large business corporate travel managers here.
No,
which sectors are coming back first in that large space?
Well, what I've told many throughout the pandemic is those that come and meet with me in person as the new CEO of American Airlines, that's where our business goes.
Anybody doing business with American Airlines who just told you how to help get its business?
A lot of people do business with us, and one of the requirements that we have is you actually come out and see us. And so throughout the pandemic, whether it was our partner Citibank or Goldman Sachs, the financial services businesses I think are getting back on their feet, and they're out there. Industrials have been there throughout, especially geographically. Parts of the country, more kind of the Midwest Sun Belt region has been really strong. and we're waiting a little bit for the professional services to come back. Now, on that front, being a large consumer of consulting and financial services and audit, related type functions as well, those are going to come back because those relationships that were established 5, 6, 7 years ago, guess what? There's been a lot of attrition in those too. So if you want to come out and do a business with American, and I imagine you'll hear the same from others that come out and see me.
All right, I think that's music to our ears
You're
in this
good.
industry. Thank you. My last, I need to hear the story with this because I know from Allison Taylor, a little inside scoop here. Did you recently swim Alcatraz with one of your daughters?
I did swim Alcatraz, and I have three children. A number of years ago, when they were quite a bit younger, we said, "Hey, look, there's value in being uncomfortable," and they had a swim club in which they challenged kids to go and swim Alcatraz, and they invited the parents to go along to do it. Well, I have a daughter that's still in high school. I wish she was born about 10 years earlier, because I'll tell you what, you don't need to be swimming Alcatraz at my age, unless you want to drink a lot of the Pacific Ocean, which is what I did, but I made it. I'm here today.
Wow, brave in your role, in your swim games,
Right.
Wow. So we are out of time, unfortunately,
Suzanne.
but we know we're going to be thinking
Yeah.
about you the next time we fly. Thank you for all you do, and thanks for supporting us here today.
Thanks, Suzanne. Really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. Let's get everybody back flying and staying in hotels and spending money.
Here we go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our association, Gbta, as we know it, wouldn't exist without volunteers, especially our committee volunteers. They bring so much in both their time, talent, energy, effectiveness, ideas. Members that are here today at Gbta or here at convention are benefiting from committee work, both in the education sessions that you're seeing today, any webinars that you attend throughout the year that are put on by our committee members. You also are going to see white papers, maturity models, and assessments that help programs to really understand where they are and where they could be, maybe where they want to be in the future. I can honestly tell you that this is a group of people that help the association and the industry move forward with different initiatives and different ideas. I think that the things that they talk about and they do that move our industry forward is immeasurable.
Please give a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, the Chief Executive Officer of the Dallas Mavericks, Cynthia Marshall.
All right, people, get up. Get up. Everybody get up. Come on, this is my song. Get up. All right, everybody get up. I can see you all over this place. Aren't you glad to be back out? I'm so glad to be out. Y'all know this song? Come on now. Let me hear you. Ain't no mountain. Come on now. Y'all know this? Ain't no river. Yes. Point to somebody. To keep me from getting to you. Okay, sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Woo! If y'all haven't figured it out, I am so glad to be out. I'm glad. How many of you are just glad to be out? Glad to be out of the house. Glad to be in San Diego, California. Woo! You know I'm from California. Any Californians in here? Now I know we have people from everywhere, but I have to call out the Californians because I am a San Francisco Bay Area girl. Yes! So who would have thought when I was growing up anybody know where Richmond, California is? Anybody know the Easter Hill public housing projects? You're like, oh, they got a little quiet then. Like, I'm a product of the Easter Hill public housing projects, okay? Do we have any former teachers? Any teachers in here, any former educators? Anybody ever did that in their background? Because stand up, please, stand up. I honor teachers, I honor educators. Let's give it up for them. I honor them wherever I go because I am standing here because 3 teachers and a principal wrapped their arms around me when I was in Richmond growing up, when my father left me, and we saw everything. Things that you think happened in a public housing project back then, it happened. I saw my dad shoot a man in the head in self-defense, in defense of me. I saw all kind of stuff, domestic violence, you name it. But my mother put 2 books in my hand at an early age. She put a math book in one hand and a Bible in the other. These educators wrapped around me and told me I could do whatever I wanted to do. And because of these great people in my life, these business people, community people, educators, I ended up at the University of California at Berkeley. Yes, go Bears! It is indeed the #1 public university in the world. Yes, just saying, okay, in case y'all didn't know, it is the #1 public institution in the world. So I am blessed, blessed, blessed to be here at this conference where we are talking about reconnecting. Somebody say reconnect, reimagine, recreate. And I'm glad I remembered to recreate because like the screen wasn't moving, okay, but it was in my head, okay? I have it memorized. I am just so happy to be here. So let me tell you, I have 3 ground rules, okay? I'm only gonna be up here for 30 minutes. I got 26 minutes and 43 seconds left. Okay, so for the next 26 minutes, I have 3 ground rules, okay? The first is that you have to talk back to me. If you haven't figured it out, I'm a noisy kind of person. I grew up in a Pentecostal church. Don't worry, we're gonna get out before midnight, okay? But I like to make noise, so give me an amen, sister. Can I get a witness, something? Talk to me. We are just blessed to have made it through this pandemic. Okay, so that's the first ground rule. You have to talk to me. The second one is that you have to talk to each other. So Jess, I know you're eating and all that. Put that food down. Okay, so just look at your neighbor and just look at him and smile and say, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're out. Okay. Yes, yes, I like that. I like that. And then the third ground rule, you know, they always tell you if you have a phone, to put your phones down, to turn them off, right? Wrong. I worked for AT&T for 36 years, okay? I love the sound of a ringing phone. Okay, that's my pension. You can text, you can talk, you can take pictures, you can do whatever you want to do because if you have an AT&T phone, that's my pension, okay? So you do not have to turn your phones off. We're going to make noise. We're going to have a good time. So what I want to talk about today is all in. Being all in as you transform your business, as you come out of this pandemic. So right now, I want you to talk to your neighbor. So let's pretend like we're in church. Get a neighbor. Pretend like we're in church. And I want you to say, neighbor. Y'all got to say it loud like we do in the Pentecostal church. Neighbor. Reconnect. Reimagine. Recreate. I'm all in. Say that part again loud. I'm all in. Okay, so where I came from, we always had 2 neighbors. Okay, so find another neighbor. Find somebody else around you. And I want you to look at them and say, neighbor, I'm all in. Say it again, neighbor, I'm all in. Okay, I like this. I like it. Give yourselves a hand. Noisy bunch. I like this noisy bunch. Okay, so before I talk about being all in, I just want to go to the next slide and I want to say thank you. Let's say thank you to all of our essential workers, people across this country. People across this country who aren't just helping America rebound, but they are helping the world rebound. So next slide, please. Show you a little picture of me. You see that in my Berkeley, you see my Berkeley cheerleading outfit, okay? Yes, I was blessed to be the first African-American cheerleader, or one of the first, at the University of California, Berkeley. I still got my moves, okay? Go Bears. And that young fella on that slide is, he was my boyfriend back then when I started college, and I had to put him on hold because I had to put him on hold. I was told to, I was raised with 4 words. Repeat after me: dream, focus, pray, act. Those were the 4 words given to me. So when I got to college and he called and told me he had transferred schools, he lived in Fresno, California, said he had transferred schools to be close to me, and told me that he was right across the bridge at San Francisco State University. That was my first week in college. Was that precious? I told him, boy, I will call you when I graduate. My first week in college. I told him I didn't have time for some smooth-talking cutie who wanted to play when I needed to study. I needed to handle my business. A lot of people were riding on me being successful. This was our ticket out of poverty for my family. And so when I graduated, guess what I did when I graduated? I called him. The day I graduated, I called him. 4 years later, do you know that boy tried to act like he didn't know who I was? And then I told him my mom was having me a party at 6 o'clock. I needed him to show up. I was so excited because I was getting ready to go to work for the phone company. I was getting ready to go to work for AT&T. It was a big deal for me and my family. And that boy told me he was engaged and couldn't come to the party that my mother was having at 6 o'clock. And I said, that's the wrong answer, dude. Like, the wrong answer. So yes, I have been married to him for 39 years. He came to the party. I tell that story all the time at graduations. I said, don't you have a call to make? In fact, when we move our kids into college, my husband always said, make that one call, because you got to put them on hold until you get out. So I am blessed to be here. I had a great career. Next slide, please. I had a great career at AT&T, 13,088 days. It was beautiful. And I learned a lot. But what I learned the most, and it's in red, is 3 L's of what I call 3 L's of leadership. In my whole 36 years, I learned that to be an effective leader, and this is what I've done at the Mavs, in order to really transform a business and move it forward, I only have to do 3 things. That is, listen to the people. Somebody say listen. Learn from the people. Learn. And love the people. That's all I have to do, is listen to the people, learn from the people, and love the people. That sums up my 13,088 days. Next slide, please. I mean, that's what I did, okay? So that was phase 1. But then phase 2 came when I got this call from Mark Cuban. Y'all know Mark Cuban? Well, that's good, because when Mark Cuban called me, I didn't know who he was. And so my husband had to tell me, honestly, I was on another call, and my phone was going off, and my husband, I said, oh my goodness, I kept getting these text messages. I gave my husband the phone. I said, one of the kids need money, because, I got 4 kids. I mean, they text, they want money, right? And I'm a busy woman. I used to tell them, you don't have to track me down. Just text me the amount, okay? We can square up later. You need $272, fine, just send me the amount. And so I told my husband, one of the kids, they need money. They're trying to get money. And he came back and he said, this guy doesn't need any money. He said, is Mark Cuban trying to reach you? And so I said, who is that? I'm not making this up. I didn't know Mark Cuban. And so I'm a busy woman, 4 kids. I'm trying to raise kids and do all what I need to do and be an executive woman. I'm trying to handle my business. I ain't got time to sit up watching Shark Tank and all that. I didn't know who this guy was, okay? And so I didn't call him. Then my husband called my son. Then my son called me, and he goes, Mom, you have to call Mark Cuban. So I told Mark Cuban I couldn't meet with him right then because, ladies, you can appreciate this. I told him I had a mammogram schedule. And he's like, okay, well, you want me to meet you there? No, I don't need you to meet me at the mammogram, okay? So when I finally ended up meeting him, and you probably know the story, the Mavs were having a big crisis. And the Mavs were in the need for cultural transformation, but more importantly, a big business transformation. So I took everything that I had ever learned at AT&T and at all my community work and said yes. It took a little while, but I ended up saying yes, and so I showed up for phase 2, all in, leading with heart. And all in is leading with intent. Somebody say intent. Inclusion. Insight. And inspiration. That is how we transformed our business at the Dallas Mavericks. Mark's request was to transform the culture. Next slide, please. So I came in with intent, okay? We were very intentional. We had a 100-day plan, and I think they're going to put it up on the screen. Don't try to write it all down, but it was in 4 parts. It was 200 items where we were just totally focused on really setting up an environment where we had a women's agenda, where we wouldn't zero tolerance, cultural transformation, and operational effectiveness. And then we laid out a set of, there it is right there. Next slide, please, okay? I only got 18 minutes here. I got stuff to do. Okay, we're trying to transform our businesses, okay? So next slide, we laid out a vision. And our vision was based on setting the standard for inclusion and diversity, because I believe in the diversity dividend. If you get that right, you can transform your business. And so we laid out a set of values. the spell crafts: character, respect, authenticity, fairness, teamwork, and safety. And so I told my team a story about character when I first got there. And it's a story that I will tell you because to me, it really sums up what character is all about. My son is named Kenneth Anthony. We adopted him when he was 2.5 years old. And when he was about 3.5, he was in preschool. And so he had a baby picture contest. And so how many parents do we have in the room? Parents, aunties, uncle, you know how it is, preschool, you're all excited. And so they have this contest. Well, we don't have a baby picture. We got him at 2.5 years old, and all we had was this sad little picture of him. And so we didn't know what we were going to do. I said, he's going to take the picture that we have. And so I'm going through the house one day, and my husband is practicing with him, and they actually have a picture of a baby. And they're practicing this whole speech that my son is getting ready to give. But the problem is that's not his baby picture, okay? Minor detail. So I told my husband, you know how you don't want to argue in front of the kids, right? And I'm talking about character. And I said, well, you can't do that. He said, oh, no. My job is to give that boy self-esteem, all that. He's been through enough. Wife, we're going to do this. So I kind of went back and forth. I went to work in San Francisco the next day. I came home, and guess what? The trophy from the baby picture contest is on my kitchen table. And it is as big as the kid, okay? And so my son is cheesing. He is so happy, and my husband is reared back. And he said, see, look how happy he is. Look how happy he is. And he says, Mom, let me tell you what happened. You want to know what happened? And actually, at this point, I didn't want to know what happened because I knew the whole thing was a sham, right? And so my son's name is Kenneth Anthony, right? The picture he had was my nephew, his cousin Jalen, right? They weren't even the same complexion. I don't even know how my husband thought he was going to pull this off. So I said, baby, tell me what happened. And he got so excited. He goes, Mom, I got up there, and I held up the picture, and I told everybody, hi, everybody, this is my cousin Jalen. He said, it's my cousin Jalen because I don't have any baby pictures because I was born in the bathtub, and then my mom left me, and they took her away to jail because she was on drugs, and then my brother was there with me, and for 2 months we didn't have anything to eat, and then I was in 3 different homes, and then I got adopted, and I have a bajillion cousins, and Jalen is my cousin. He said, Mommy, everybody just started crying, and they gave me the trophy. Okay, so here is the moral to that story. At 3.5 years old, with his parents' permission to lie, and I'm not saying just his daddy, because at some point I was like, okay, this is all right, okay? At 3.5 years old, with his parents' permission to lie, that boy told the truth. And you know why he did? Because we have integrity at 3.5 years old. Character is in us at 3.5 years old. Even with the most authoritative people in his life, the people who literally fed him, telling him it's okay to tell a different story and to do the wrong thing, he did the right thing. And so I told that to my team, and so that's what we talk about, is it's in us at 3.5 years old to always do the right thing. Authenticity is big for us. Our hashtag is do you. Look at somebody and say, do you? Fairness was a big thing that we focused on. Roll the video. Gender equity, pay equity was a big thing for us.
If I was Prime Minister, I would make it illegal. Why does he get $5?
That's just the way it is.
$7. It should be flat out illegal. Like, I'm not joking. I'm not being unreasonable.
Women and men should have the same money. They should have 50-50. 60-60 if you want to do 120.
It should just be how hard you work.
If you do the same work, you should get paid the same money.
What we're trying to tell you is that it's not fair that boys get paid more than girls.
Maybe if the men noticed they were being paid more than the women, they should speak up about it.
When I am older, I'm going to make a change. If I don't forget.
I have no words, it's so wrong.
All right, he said he's going to make a change if he doesn't forget. So let's not forget, okay? Stand up. Teamwork was a big thing for us. Teamwork. I learned about teamwork. That's me on the second row with the big afro. These are my sorority sisters. I was in Delta Gamma. I was a DG in college. Oh, we got DGs out there? Where's the DG? Anchors away, sister. Okay. So I learned something when I was 19 years old about teamwork. Okay, so this was, you can imagine, this was a great cultural experience for me and for them. And we used to sing something every Monday night. We have something called Vespers. I never heard of the word Vespers, okay? And so we would sing a song. And the song is, no man is an island. No man stands alone. Each man's joy is joy to me. Each man's grief is my own. We need one another, so I will defend. Each man as my brother, each man as my friend. We've tried to practice that a lot at the Dallas Mavericks. When I was 19 years old, I thought that was so corny. No man is an island. No woman is an island. Well, you know what? I have figured it out. And if we have figured out nothing else, in the past 2 years, we have figured out that we need each other. So, with my theme song in the background, I want you to just go and find 3 people and do it fast, because I'm down to 12 minutes. Tell them, no man is an island, you can count on me. It's about teamwork to transform our business. No man is an island, you can count on me. You can count on me. No man is an island, you can count on me. Okay, sit down. No man or woman is an island, you can count on me. Okay, we were very intentional. Next slide, please. We were very intentional about investing in our people. Those are all the things we did as we transformed our business. We looked at the infrastructure. We looked at market-based compensation, leadership training. What kind of things did we need to do to retain our people? We laid out a business planning process from the bottom to the top. We did all of this. But the most important thing, and I am sure my buddy Seth talked about it this morning, diversity and inclusion was a big strategy for ours. And I'm going to teach you a little lesson on diversity and inclusion. We all know what diversity is about. Next slide, please. It's about the dimensions of diversity. Some things you can see, some things you can't see. But all in, we try to bring it all together. I like to describe it as diversity is about sometimes counting the numbers. Inclusion is about making the numbers count. Diversity is a fact. Inclusion is a choice. Diversity is about the ingredients, all of us. I mean, you can look around, okay? But then what do you do with those ingredients? Inclusion is about the recipe. It's about how you mix it all up, how you make them feel when you bring that person to the table. But my favorite definition is diversity is being invited to the party. In fact, say it with me, diversity. Loud like we're in church. Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Stand up. I'm going to ask you to dance. How many of you consider yourselves to be good dancers? All right, we got some dancers in here. How many of you know how to do the Cupid Shuffle? Okay, raise your hand if you know how to do the Cupid Shuffle. Okay, come up to the front. I need about 20 people up here with me. We're going to teach the whole room. Okay, you raise your hands. Come on stage. Come on, come from whatever direction you're coming from. Let's do this. Let's do this, people. Come on. Come on. Okay, y'all gotta watch because you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it. To the right. To the right. To the left. Okay, kick. Walk it out. To the right. We transformed our business by inclusion. Diversity was great, but we led with inclusion. So these fabulous, fabulous dancers, give it up for them, okay? We're going to dispatch these angels around the room, and everybody is going to learn how to do the Cupid Shuffle. Go. I'm dispatching you. I'm dispatching you. Go around the room. We have invited you to this party, and in order to transform this business, we got to teach you how to dance. Okay, I'm giving y'all 2 minutes. Give me the music. Y'all got 2 minutes to learn the Cupid Shuffle because we got to move quick. Come on, to the right, to the left. Y'all look good. Kick. Walk it out. Come on, to the right.
They say I'm a rapper, and I say
to the left.
They say what you doing, trying to do. Somebody
kick.
The music come from my soul.
Walk it out.
All of my people can stay on the floor.
To the right.
You got a brand new dance. You gotta move
to
your
the left.
brand new dance.
Y'all look good. Kick.
It don't matter if you're young or you're old.
Come on, everybody, to the right. That's it. That's it. Okay, one last time. One last time. Let's do it. Y'all look fabulous. All right, I think y'all got it. I think y'all got it. Y'all must be the party people. Y'all got it. Okay? Next slide, please. I've never seen a group of people get it that fast. Okay, so we're talking about all in, leading with intent, leading with inclusion. Now we're talking about leading with insight. How many of you see a 6 up there? How many see a 6? How many of you see a 9? How many of you see a G? Anybody see anything else? All right, that was gonna wig me out if you saw something else, okay? But we focused a lot when we were transforming our business on perspectives and valuing each other and valuing our perspectives. I love what it says. Just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. Next slide, please. I like that. And then leading with inspiration. I got 4 minutes, okay? Leading with, what am I talking about? Leading with inspiration, okay? These are the values, my personal values. And you can tell the values that we laid out at the Dallas Mavericks were based on my personal values. This is what, as a leader, that I think I bring to the table that help to transform our business. We put a big focus on family. And you see we always have hashtags. And hashtag for family is know your crystal balls from your rubber balls. So as we are out here trying to make things happen, we have to know what's important. Crystal, let me show you this crystal ball. See, I just so happen to have it with me, okay? If I drop this, which I did one time, it shatters, it never comes back. As you are out doing your thing, trying to come through this pandemic, you put all these things in place to transform your business, you got to keep your priorities in the right place. Do you know what's crystal? Do you know what are the things in your life that if you drop them and they shatter, they will never come back? So we're getting deep now, okay? So think about what's crystal. Rubber are the things that will come back. I remember one time we moved to North Carolina from California, and they at North Carolina in the house? Tar Heel State. I was just there yesterday morning. Aggie Pride. Okay, See, it's all coming out, okay? It's all coming out. So we had moved, and they asked me to do something in Washington, D.C. all week. And I told them I could be there all week except for that Wednesday. I couldn't be there Wednesday afternoon because my son was having his first high school swim meet. And so when they gave me the schedule, when I got to D.C. to meet with all these big policymakers, the most important meetings were on Wednesday afternoon. So what do you think I did? I left. I went to the swim meet. And I'm convinced to this day that my baby won that individual medley race because his mama was in the stands. Because that's what was important to me. Let me show you what happens with crystal balls. Crystal balls bounce, and if you're lucky, somebody will catch it. And he didn't throw it back to me. He caught it. He's going to handle whatever it is. Handle that, okay? And then over here, okay, so sometimes they'll catch it and it'll come back. And then sometimes they'll just go somewhere and nobody will catch it because it just wasn't that important, okay? Know what's crystal and know what is rubber in your life. Next slide, please. I'll show you my babies. They are crystal to me. Every one of those babies have sad, abuse, neglect stories that they could tell you. All 4 of our children are adopted out of foster care. And somehow the Lord blessed us. The Lord blessed us to be able to get them. They are crystal. Now, if I was doing this session for just the women, I'd have my bell that I ring on Mother's Day and the crown that I have. I wear it on Mother's Day. All y'all would have crowns, but we got fellas in the audience, so I don't have 30 minutes, so I had to cut something out. But these are my babies. They call me the queen of the castle. Next slide, please. Health. I need you to look at somebody like you're in church. I have a question. In my last minute here, I need you to ask them, do you have PMS? Ask the question. Ask your neighbor, do you have PMS? Okay. Now, I don't know why you're laughing, because all I'm talking about is physical, mental, and spiritual health. I don't know what you thought I was talking about, okay? And that became very important to me in December of 2010 when I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, 1 lymph node from stage 4 with 6 months to live. That was almost 12 years ago. By the grace of God, I am standing here. So as you're doing all this transformation, as you are kind of recreating and reimagining your businesses, make sure you have a focus on PMS, physical, mental, and spiritual health. So, last slide here, just speed through them now, I only got a few seconds. That's the joy of completing our 100-day plan. The people got real happy. We delivered on it. We delivered on it. Next slide, please. That's our current situation. Look at those results. Look at those results. 93% employee satisfaction. 93% leadership supports the culture. We just got the NBA's Inclusion Award again for the 2nd time. We signed up. We included our employees. We sealed the deal with them, and we delivered. So stand up one last time, because I got 29 seconds. Last slide, people. We got some work that we got to do together. Look at that. We got some work we got to do, but we can do it together. We've come through a pandemic. We're coming through inequality. Let me give you some questions to ask. Next slide, please. What will you be intentional about? What new things will you try? How will you foster inclusion? Who will you teach to dance? There's some people who you need to teach to dance. What insight do you need from others? You see a 6, they see a 9, somebody sees a G. You need their insight. How will you ensure that every voice matters? Our leadership promise, our workplace promise is every voice matters and everybody belongs. How will you ensure that? Where will you look for inspiration? And how will you inspire others? If you are all in for this business transformation, as I leave the stage, go to 5 people and tell them, I'm all in. God bless you.
In order for us to actually be global, we must have global representation. We certainly have things that happen in the regions that are not the same across the world. And so we need to be mindful of those nuances, and we need to ensure that when we are creating resources that we are understanding and catering for those nuances as well.
Gbta has a huge role to play because the global business travel community needs a collective voice. It means, among other things, that Gbta has opportunities to do and impact things that no other industry association can do. The task is to stay on the forefront of business travel things and being the connector between Gbta globally and members and partners regionally.
Working collectively across the global business travel community means strength. It means strength for our industry, it means strength for our association. When we work together, we work towards making things better, and that is how we get stronger.
Please welcome the Global Head of Travel at Boston Consulting Group, Jihan Kolliander, joined by the Chief Executive Officer of Uber, Dara Khosrowshahi.
It's been a long time, shouldn't have left you without a dope. Step two, step two, step two, step two, step two. It's been a long time, we shouldn't have left you.
Wow. I think it's a bit unfair to be immediately after the session with Cynthia Marshall.
We were practicing our dance moves in the back there, but not nearly as good as yours. So.
Absolutely not. So we're setting expectation. Unfortunately, there will be no dancing during this session. So, Dara, welcome to Gbta.
Thank you very much for having me.
How was your Uber ride on your way here?
It was great. I tried actually our Comfort Electric, and had Timothy, who was driving a Tesla. So I wanted to see how the Tesla program through a partnership with Hertz was going, and he was a very, very happy driver. It was pretty cool.
Excellent. Today we will be touching on topics that are very, very critical to many organizations. Topics such as sustainability, DE&I, innovation, digital, safety, security, employee value propositions. Those strategic priorities are incorporated into firms' travel programs by the likes of myself and my peers, and basically beyond that translated into priorities, into processes, into actions. But let's first take a step back and talk a little bit about yourself. You joined Uber 2017. What did it take to lead the transformation of the company culture back then and successfully change the perception of many corporates who may have been hesitant in the past to utilize your service?
Yeah, I think it was. I think the good news for me was that coming in as a new CEO, I certainly had the stage to radically change the culture of the company. Uber had been a company that had been incredibly innovative, one of the fastest growing private companies out there. I think the first unicorn out there. But I think the company went from an upstart essentially to an incumbent and didn't realize was still using upstart tactics as an incumbent, which is not a good way to behave. So for me, coming in as a new CEO, everyone knew that the company needed cultural change. So from that standpoint, I was in a good position. For me, it was about the cultural change started with the board of directors to make sure that I had the support from our board to drive cultural change. We brought on Chairman Ron Sugar. He's on the board of Apple, Amgen, Chevron, a number of other companies who have incredible cultures and are leading. We drove diversity at the board. 4 out of 11 our board members are women because we wanted to make sure we have different viewpoints and different opinions and different observations about how we set our strategy going forward. Once we had our board set, it was about management. And while Uber has incredible operational management, I brought a new general counsel, Tony West from PepsiCo, Nelson Che from Merrill Lynch, Nikki, who was working with me back at Gbta as well. And then we turned to culture. And we rewrote all of the cultural values of the company. It was actually a really interesting process, which is we crowdsourced some of the cultural elements. We wanted to listen to our employees. I was a new person in town, so I really wanted to go talk to employees, talk to engineers, talk to call center operators, talk to drivers about what they wanted Uber to be, and we used that input essentially to recalibrate and totally rewrite our cultural values. And our values now represent who we are and who we want to be. Doing the right thing. Building with heart as a company. We have a value which is great minds don't think alike, right? Which is bring all these different viewpoints to the company. And once we had the board, management, culture aligned, it was about execution. Cultural change takes a long time. I think the minute you think you're done, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So it's a journey that we're constantly moving on, but we're absolutely moving in the right direction as a team now.
Great. Before you took the helm at Uber, you were the CEO of Gbta. From your perspective, what has changed in the travel industry since? And would you agree with me that the fact that you've decided, for example, to include functionalities such as booking air, hotel, train as part of Uber is an influence from the Gbta time?
Yeah, definitely. I never want to leave the travel industry. It's such a great industry, and for me, the Gbta experience was so incredible in that there was such passion around Gbta about the subject matter, about travel, and you see the same thing at Uber. We talk about reimagining the way the world moves for the better at Uber. And people come to Uber because of the impact that we can have on how people live their daily lives, how they travel, how they eat. And we've got now over 5 million earners earning a living, sometimes full-time, sometimes part-time, on the platform as well. So for me, Uber kind of has that same impact in terms of everyday life and positive impact in the world. And ultimately, Uber, like Gbta, is about moving people around. We move people around kind of lower radii and closer in places, and the frequency with which we use the product is much, much higher. And so I consider Uber and Gbta neighbors, and travel for us is a really, really big segment of our business, especially on the Uber for Business segment. So I love being able to kind of visit the travel ecosystem once in a while.
Excellent. So the pandemic was a tough period on many people, many corporations overall. Could we talk a bit about the growth of Uber Eats during that period of time? I've read that you guys had Uber Eats as your main revenue stream with over 200% in revenue year over year. I'm particularly interested in the way this has positioned your company for the future. And from my personal perspective, I'm interested in the adoption and the increase of usage by corporates. I found out personally that on the BCG side, we're using a lot of Uber Eats, so it's something that I need to check on. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the growth in Uber Eats has been incredible, and obviously the pandemic hit our mobility business really hard. It was an incredibly difficult time for the company, but it was a huge, huge catalyst for the Uber Eats business. And for perspective, I've been at Uber for almost 5 years now. Uber Eats was about a $2.5 billion run rate business. Now, 5 years later, we're at $55+ billion. So it's unbelievable how quickly Uber Eats has grown. And now the Uber Rides and Eats business, they're essentially of equal size. So on a daily basis, one will be bigger than the other, which is, it's great to have that kind of rivalry as it relates to Eats. And what we're seeing now is incredible synergies on the platform, which is a lot of our riders are turning to be eaters, and a lot of our couriers are now going back to driving people as well, now that the safety concerns as far as having another person in your car is much, much less. So we have this great kind of synergy between the two sides of the business. The same is happening as it relates to corporate clients. So corporate clients who used to use U4B essentially exclusively for transportation, especially during the pandemic, they were giving free meals to their employees. Now they are sometimes using Uber Eats as a benefit to get employees back into the office. If you get back into the office, we'll give you a free lunch. If you're working late, you can have dinner on the company as well, in addition to transportation, as an example. And then we're seeing some really cool, innovative use cases for Uber for Business on the Eats side that, frankly, we didn't anticipate. It might be if you show up for a sales pitch, we'll give you lunch for free. So we're seeing businesses now use Uber Eats vouchers as essentially either rewards for employees or rewards for sales for engagement levers to get people essentially into virtual roadshows, et cetera. So the growth of Uber Eats has been phenomenal, both on the consumer side, but also on the corporate side as well.
So let's talk a bit about company move to profitability. We are in an environment where we're seeing unprecedented rates of inflation, unfortunate recession or risk of recession looming over us. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, fortunately for us, as the pandemic has moved behind us, our mobility business, which is the more profitable, it's a more mature part of the business, more profitable part of the business, is coming back at very, very high rates. So last quarter, we booked almost $30 billion in bookings, up over 30% on a year-on-year basis. And we got to free cash flow profitability, which is great, so that we can be self-funding. And I think for us, the pandemic experience was a really difficult experience, but with some tech companies who've never really had to go through the cost discipline that they had to, for us, we went through that experience as part of the pandemic, and we're coming out of the pandemic now with both cylinders hitting, which is a really, really big delivery business and a mobility business that's growing as well. The other tailwind for us is we're seeing now a shift from retail spend. During the pandemic, people buying anything and everything delivered to their home, including food, which is great, now to increase spend on services. And travel and mobility, et cetera, are lead in terms of that kind of service spend. So we're actually seeing our business grow at very high rates, profitability come in. You know, all of us have to be careful in this kind of an environment. It's an incredibly uncertain environment out there, so we are being cautious in terms of growth and headcount. But at the same time, we continue to invest in innovation, right? Uber for Business, shared rides. We're getting into the grocery space so that Eats is not just about food. Now it's about ordering all of your groceries, getting liquor delivered to your home as well. So we are continuing to push both on the top line and the bottom line. And for now, that shift of spend to services is a huge tailwind for us that we're taking advantage of.
So it's a good segue for us to talk a little bit about the on-demand transportation piece, and particularly from the corporate traveler perspective. You've pioneered important criteria that are for corporate travelers are key, such as dependability, traveler experience, safety and security. How is Uber integrating those criteria and elements in the offering to the corporate traveler?
Well, I think, first of all, starting with duty of care is an incredibly important part of the corporate travel management experience, and I'm familiar with it from my olden days of Agencia, right? And so we've actually built a tool set at Uber as it relates to duty of care that we think is unsurpassed, which is now corporate travel manager can, on a real-time basis, see exactly where your employees are, anywhere in the world, and to get that tracking on a real-time basis, which is pretty phenomenal. If an unfortunate circumstance happens on the ground in any country in which we operate, we have local safety teams that specialize in these kinds of occurrences. As you can imagine, at our scale, there are safety incidents that happen, but on the ground, every place in which we do business, we have teams on the ground that are handling it. And then we have features like tracking your ride so that you can have your loved ones track your ride. Obviously, the company that you work for can track your ride as well. And then features like Ride Check, which is if there's a stop, that's an unexpected stop. If your Uber goes off track, off of the route that it should be taken, we actually proactively will contact you and make sure that things are okay. So the technology we have around safety, I think, is making us the safest transportation platform on Earth. And we also hold ourselves accountable to releasing safety statistics every 2 years in a way that no other company can. We're then combining that with the kinds of reliability that corporate travelers want. And the lead feature there is a reserve function, which allows you to reserve an Uber 30 days in advance. The car shows up early. The driver, the wait time is already paid for, so that reliability of Uber Reserve, and you can have Comfort Electric like I took, or you can take Black if you want as well, if you want a higher level of service. You've got the combination of both, which is tech-enabled safety along with reliability and very, very high service as well. And you put it all together, we think it's a pretty good combination.
Absolutely. But if I may ask, what would you think is your competitive advantage, particularly of Uber Black versus other players in the high-end hailing segment in general?
Well, because we can bring that same service level at scale on a global basis, right? So it is usually high-end, high-touch services aren't very tech-enabled, right? And it's high-touch, like you talk about your hands, etc. We're essentially combining high touch, high service. Drivers are accountable, drivers are rated, etc. We do background checks on drivers every single year. We run those background checks over and over again. So we're able to deliver that same high-end service. We keep ourselves accountable. Every single ride is tracked, and every single ride has essentially a rating associated with it, along with the technical integration with companies and a delightful app kind of experience as well. We want to get you the best of both worlds, and we think that ultimately is our advantage in addition to the global scope that we have. It is the same app, the same expectations, the same service levels, essentially wherever you go as it relates to the global footprint that we've got.
Great. So let's change gear and wrap it a little bit on a topic that is fundamental for most organizations, and that is sustainability. It is something that we're aware that Uber is laser focused on, not only from a consumer perspective, but also driver perspective. I'd like to hear a little bit more about Uber for Business is doing for corporates on that topic.
Definitely. So on the sustainability front, there are two directions that we're focused on. One is moving our fleet to essentially electric. We've committed now in US, Canada, Europe to go essentially all electric by 2030, by 2040 all over the world. And we're on track now. Like in California, over 5% of our miles are on electric vehicles. We've talked about the partnership that we have with Hertz to get 50,000 Teslas on the road. In London, we're looking to be all electric by 2025. 90% of new cars that are coming onto our fleet in London are essentially electric or hybrid as well. So we are well on our way now to electrifying our fleet, and I think we have the largest EV on-demand fleet in the world. As it relates to corporate customers, more and more what's becoming important for corporations is for them to be accountable to essentially their carbon footprint. And what we're going to be introducing is the ability for corporates in a real-time basis to track their carbon footprint based on their transportation with Uber. So a corporation can make the election, we only want you to take green, or in certain circumstances you can take greens or hybrids, etc. We've had some corporate clients who have told their employees, we want you to take Uber Green. Wait times sometimes are longer, but it is super important for us essentially to reduce our carbon footprint. And so companies will be able to hold themselves accountable on a real-time basis as it relates to tracking emissions as it relates to transportation. So that's super important with corporate customers. At the same time, another part of sustainability is to allow one vehicle to carry more than one passenger. So we're also working on Uber X Share, relaunching Share, so people can share vehicles. It helps, it's a more sustainable way of traveling, but also helps congestion in cities as well. Yeah. If you come on your Uber app now, you can get Lime scooters and or bikes as well. So we're offering other modes of transportation. If you're traveling, less than 5 miles, you might want to take an e-bike. It's a great way of getting around as well. And then in certain countries, we're actually testing high-capacity vehicles. And it's the same technology that we use to get Pool to match multiple riders into one vehicle, except in this case, multiple can be up to 20 riders in a single vehicle. And what we're seeing on the ground in a lot of these countries is that our riders are using Uber as their commute essential platform, and the frequency of use can be up to 20 times a week as well. And we're offering those same high-capacity vehicles to business customers. You know, do you want to offer that with your fleet to get your workers to a factory or an office, et cetera? We can do it in a much more high-tech way. It's all trackable, and it's much more efficient than having, let's say, a corporate fleet. So sustainability, you know, I always say that sustainability is a team sport. All of us need to engage in it. We've got to hold ourselves accountable to it. And if you hold yourself accountable, and this is why the corporate kind of scorecard of your being able to track your emissions is so important. If you hold yourself accountable, then good things happen.
Great. I have one final question, and I think it's the most important one. Are you planning on a vacation with your family soon?
That's a very important question. In the travel business, we're actually going to go to the World Cup in Doha, which we're really excited about. So I think we'll be one of the... I was born in Iran, so we're going to be rooting for Iran, and we're going to be rooting for the US as well. So that'll be fun.
Excellent. Lovely. Well, Dara, thank you very much. It's been lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Please welcome the President of the Allied Leadership Council and Treasurer of Gbta, Dorothy Dowling.
Well, hello everyone. Wasn't that an incredible session? Chock full of valuable data and inspiration. My heart is overflowing with Cynthia's messages, and I'm sure yours are too. So a big thank you to our presenters for their insights and actionable information that will help us tackle both the challenges and opportunities that come with transformation. Transformation will continue to be the current and future state of global business travel. It will be one of the biggest challenges and also opportunities for us as professionals and leaders. And even as we keep our sights on the change happening in our business and industry, we must always keep our people at the center. I'm currently inspired by the book, The Heart of Business by Hubert Joly, former CEO of Best Buy, and familiar to all of us when he led Carlson Wagonlit Travel. In the book, he discusses how people are the human magic, the heart of business, and how without them and their leadership, passion, commitment, businesses cannot succeed. And that is consistently the message that we've heard this morning and certainly over the lunch break. So if we lead with this purpose and humanity, we can reinvent business toward that sustainable future. I also recently read a book by Mike Levin, who's an icon in the hotel business, about how making a commitment to treating others well and fostering good relationships is the path to success. I know it's something my Gbta volunteer journey has helped me to pay it forward through my work with WINIT, the Allied Leadership Council, and the Gbta board. Now, when I think of the Gbta convention, although I might have to recast this with Cynthia speaking as today, I always think of it as the Super Bowl of business travel. But it also comes down to one thing. It's the people. This is a peer-to-peer industry event and really a community where we all get to learn, contribute, and shape our future together. And it's through that collaboration that we'll reimagine our future together, which is the journey Gbta has been on under Suzanne's leadership. Change is in our lives, business, and ourselves. It's going to continue to be a constant. But how we embrace that change and work together is the key to our future.